Hello and welcome to another edition of the Matchbook NFL Betting Podcast. And as you can see on screen right now, if you're watching us on YouTube and wherever else, you can see in the top left of my screen, host of the Simple Handicap Podcast, Mr. Adam Chernoff. On the bottom left, host of the Deep Dive Podcast, Mr. Drew Dinsick. And the bottom right, regular Matchbook NFL contributor, Brad Allen. First of all, guys, I want to get a key takeaway from week 7. But Drew, before we go anywhere, you gave us so much hope on the Jets last week. Why did you do it? I woke up on Tuesday morning, watched the YouTube highlights. I saw that they were about 8 minutes long, and I was thinking to myself, that must mean it's a blowout. And I knew there wasn't going to be a Jets blowout.
That's a good point, and I don't know how I'm supposed to handicap this week. The way that some of my sides went last week, I'm looking at the board. I'm seeing ghosts.
I'll stick with you, sir, for 2 seconds. What was your key takeaway from last week?
Coaching was pretty important. A couple of the tighter games where you had two teams that are really competing for playoff positioning here, I felt like the differentiating factor was coaching. I gave huge credit to Frank Reich for getting this Indianapolis Colts team in position to win the AFC South, and I gave huge credit to John Harbaugh for having confidence in his quarterback, for going for it on that fourth down to put that game away. Pete Carroll, on the other hand, most of his decisions in that game, I think, cost the Seahawks pretty severely. And now they're tied with the Rams, and looking up 2 wins away at the Niners. So it's going to be fascinating to see how the NFC West shakes out.
Adam Chernoff, what kind of weekend did you have?
Up and down. Started great, finished not so well on Monday Night Football. But I guess my takeaway is market mediocrity continues. Sides and totals with the movement 12-12 combined. So really not indicative of success if you're getting ahead of the numbers. And away favorites continue, away teams in general continue to cover at a very high rate. Also win outright at a very high rate too. So interested to see this sort of continuous lack of home field advantage showing through for yet another week.
Prof, Falcons, disaster.
Yeah, that was going to be my takeaway, I suppose, that maybe we're at the point of the season now where we do have to start thinking a little bit more about motivation. Which teams have quit on their coach? Which teams, players are getting traded away now? Do we have to start thinking about how these locker rooms are feeling, how they're preparing? So, yeah, I think that comes into consideration now.
Yeah, we're going to get some big lines. But, gentlemen, let's start first of all in Sunday evening game in Houston, Texas, as the Raiders take on the Texans. Current betting here at Matchbook on the money line, come back to Raiders, 3.62. Might be a bit of a frisky underdog this week. 1.35 are the Texans. The line is 6.5 currently. Texans minus 6.5 at 1.92. 51.5 is the total, and it's slightly favouring the under. Adam Chernoff, I will start here with you. Look, I think Oakland, that scoreline probably flattered Green Bay last week. I thought they were kind of well in that game for different parts. Obviously, the Texans coming off that loss at Indy. Where are you seeing the value in this one?
I think that this is a green light to the over, and we've seen the market go up just a little bit since open, looking at 51.5 this morning, and I think that number is still good as long as you're getting better than 52, and a lot of this comes down to just how underrated the Oakland Raiders are offensively. As you mentioned, that box score not very flattering, but also sort of how that game played out at the end of the first half and beginning of the second half, not flattering too. You don't see a team put up north of 10 yards per pass very often and end up losing a game by double digits, and that's exactly what happened with the Raiders. But you look at Oakland overall, second in passing success rate this season and 11th running the football. They're doing so against an enormous offensive line. Those guys up there, huge, one of the biggest offensive lines in the NFL, and they're giving Derek Carr opportunities to throw the football, pressured on just 25% of his dropbacks, which is the third lowest rate in the NFL. He gets a Houston Texans secondary, which is going to be without 3 potentially starters in their secondary. Strangely, they shipped over the Raiders. They'd ship over their best corner. So that's an interesting thing we'll get to with the Houston Texans. But looking at how Oakland can move the football, Romeo Cornell, very soft zone coverage consistently. That plays well into Derek Carr getting the ball out of his hands quickly. And this Oakland Raiders secondary, flipping the things around, we're looking at Deshaun Watson, who ranks first in completion rate, second in adjusted completion, and averages 9.0 yards per pass with 113 passer rating when kept clean. This Raiders pass rush, worst in the NFL. And now they're going to be starting a secondary of Darryl Worley, LaMarcus Joyner, and 6 potential backups, depth players, with a combined 62 snaps this season. So without Conley in that lineup, this Raiders secondary, which was among the worst, gets a lot worse. They're going to have to face Deshaun Watson. If they can't generate pressure, both of these teams move the football consistently. I think we're in line for a ton of points within this game.
All right. Professor Brad Allen, what are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, broadly in agreement. I think that last point there is quite key. Like the Raiders just they didn't get a hand on Aaron Rodgers all week. Obviously, that's like the Packers are a top 5 O-line, but the Texans are up there this season. I think they're 7th or 8th by PFF pass blocking grades. So if the Raiders don't get near Deshaun Watson here, then they're going to carve them up. The only possible pause for thought would be this Garyon Conley trade. Obviously, he's not got great metrics to date, but Stephen Ruiz, he's a great NFL writer at USA Today. I'll quote him a few times. He actually went through the metrics, and the Texans could play a fair bit more man with Conley, and he's given up 1.38 yards per man coverage snap, which is better than Marshawn Lattimore, better than Jalen Ramsey, better than Jair Alexander. So he's actually quite a good man corner. So he might improve that defense. But
can I ask you on that, Brad? How much stock do you ever put into the fact that he signed from the Raiders and what he can bring across regards intelligence to the Texans this week?
I don't know, to be honest.
Okay, fair.
I have no idea how you would quantify that, to be quite honest. Obviously, the Raiders don't think too much of him because they've gone, you can have him, you can play against him. We don't care. But it does leave the Raiders very thin, as Adam said. So I think Houston's going to get their points. And the Oakland Raiders have been a very well coached offense this year, and I think they should get theirs too.
Drew Dinsick, strong vote of confidence for the over here from the two gentlemen. What are you in agreement?
Yeah, I'm on this over as well. I actually sold up to 53.5. I think this is, I think this is a high 50s, low 60s type of game. I can see a lot of opportunities here for the Raiders to get on the scoreboard, which was really my differentiating factor. Because then first way I attacked this was perfect get right spot for Houston. They have an absolutely ideal matchup with this Raiders defense. They're going to be able to kind of play exactly the same way, exactly aggressive style that Green Bay rolled out last week and put up 40 points on this Raiders defense. Raiders, are at the very tail end of probably one of the most horrific schedule stretches I've ever seen for any NFL team. They had 2 games on the road at Minnesota and I can't remember the other one, Indianapolis and Minnesota, right before their London game, and then a bye, and then 2 more road games against Green Bay and now Houston. This is like a wild stretch of just never playing at home, and that tends to wear down a team. And I think we saw it in the way that they executed last week in Green Bay. That box score was a little deceiving too. They could have put up close to 40 points if there weren't for some pretty inopportune and unlikely red zone turnovers there. So I think the Raiders can score on this Texans defense. Texans defense I have in the bottom third of the league, and I think with the injuries to their secondary, which was already pretty weak, I think that Carr is going to look pretty good. Trent Brown potentially coming back on the offensive line is huge too. He's playing the best tackle of any offensive tackle in football right now. So the Raiders really should be able to get theirs in this game, and then I would expect the Texans can put them away. I'm expecting the scoreline looks not all that indifferent from Houston versus Atlanta from a couple weeks ago.
Good stuff. Okay, strong vote of confidence there for the over in Houston on Sunday evening. Before we move on to the next game, you probably saw it last week if you were with us, but we know of Aka's at Matchbook, and obviously, you sit down, you watch Red Zone at 6 o'clock on a Sunday, and there's some really short prices, but you can start rolling them up. Couple this week, the Rams are a 13-point favorite. They're going to be really short. The Lions are short. The Colts are short. Anybody that's playing the Atlanta Falcons should be just thrown into one of these bets right now because they're not winning any games. You can probably make the similar case for the Miami Dolphins. So don't forget, at Matchbook, we now have this feature, and you can sign up at matchbook.com today. Let's move on to potentially one of the games of the week. This is one that's kind of jumped out at me from afar. The Carolina Panthers at the unbeaten San Francisco 49ers. Current betting here at Matchbook, Carolina Panthers on the money line 3.04. Wow, that's a tasty price. The 49ers are 1.45. The current handicap is 5.5 for the Panthers, getting the start at 1.97. Total is 41.5. Drew Dinsick, I will stay with you for this one. Sir, what are you kind of thinking here? Because, I mean, we looked at the 49ers last week in Washington D.C. and that that Rain Bowl, and they won 9-0, and it's hard to know what to take away from that. I know their defense is really good, but are the 49ers really that good?
Well, their defense is legit. They have the best. They have a top 2 or top 3 front 7 in the league. That's pretty clear. And we don't like to lean too heavily on using defense past performance as a forward indicator in any way, shape, or form, because we've learned over the years it's not especially predictive. The handful of exceptions are when you are as good a pass defense as the Patriots, or when you are as good a front 7 as the Niners, then you tend to have some pretty impactful, pretty impactful say on the outcome of a given game. And I would expect that you have 2 pretty fresh, pretty healthy, and pretty dangerous defenses in this game. The Panthers can be picked on defensively if you have an especially precise passing attack. If it's a little loose, though, they're pretty good at turning over the ball. And I would say that Jimmy Garoppolo not really doing it to this point in the season. Yeah. He's getting wins, but it's on the back of the way that the defense is performing.
He's almost like a game manager right now, Drew, isn't he?
Very, 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 very much fits that narrative. And I would even say, Kyle Shanahan has matured into one of the better coaches in the NFL at this point, and he is really kind of making up for a lot of Garoppolo's limitations. Now, this isn't to say you can take that and extend it through the rest of the season, because Garoppolo is obviously coming off an ACL. He hasn't even gotten a full 16 games as a starting quarterback in this league yet. So he can still improve. He can grow. He may be dangerous by the end of this year, but we haven't seen it yet. And I would expect that he's going to have a tough day against the Carolina defense, ball hawking unit. They can turn the ball over. This sets up pretty well. And, I got an early under on this when it was opened at about, 42.5, and it's down to 40.5. That makes total sense to me. I think that's a little bit tighter. I wouldn't play the under at 40.5 at this point. And similarly, I thought Carolina was a great bet at +6, but now that it's ticked down to 5.5, it's a lot tighter. And to be honest with you, money line option when you're down in this range 5. I mean, you have to probably consider selling points down to say 4, or just back them on the money line, because the Panthers should be pretty dangerous in this one. The question really just comes down to, do they have a way to attack the Niners through the air if the going gets tough? Can they replicate their game that they had against the Houston Texans, where they squeaked out a 16-point win? We know their kicking game is strong. Carolina can execute special teams, so I do fancy them to be live in this game and to potentially get the upset.
Yeah, +6 is available at 1.85, but I was just holding your fire a small bit of margin in that market. You will get a better price closer to kickoff time. Brad Allen, you're keen on something in this. I'm not totally sure what. I'm hoping you're kind of leaning the way myself and Drew are with the Panthers here.
I wouldn't be involved in the side. Although at 5.5, I would probably lean to San Fran. I quite like the under, although that was at 41.5. Now, I do think this will tick back up than above. I think it will tick back up to 41.5. Because I've already seen a couple of ratings models out there that have this a little bit higher. But I think if we actually kind of break into the matchups, I think this does favour the under. So I think the key matchup here is the San Fran defensive line that, as Drew says, is probably 1 or 2 in the league. And they're going up against the Panthers offensive line that's 23rd in run blocking and 22nd in pass protection. So I can't see Kyle Allen having much time back there. And he's proved himself an average quarterback, 17th in the NFL. By Football Outsiders, 16th in QBR, so mid-pack. But he's not going to have faced a pass rush like this. And then McCaffrey as well. We've seen that he can be shut down by defenses that want to stop him. The Buccaneers, they shut him down almost completely, sort of 65 yards in both those games that they've played. And then the other side of it, we've also seen the Niners. It's a little bit clouded by that game last week, but they've lost their left and right tackle and their fullback, and so the pace they're playing has dropped. They were kind of one of the quickest in the league, but over the last month they're now the 17th quickest in seconds per snap, so below average, and they're obviously running the ball at 55% clip, second highest in the league. And that is the weakness of this Carolina defense. So they're 3rd versus the pass, but 30th by DVOA against the rush. So I think we're just going to see a lot of Niners just running the ball and just grinding their way through this, like they've done the last 2 games against the Rams and the Redskins. And I think they'd probably win a low-scoring one.
Yeah, a lot of clock when that ball is being run, and that's a beautiful scenario when you're backing an under.
Yeah.
Adam Chernoff, I don't know if you're strong on either side there. Anything kind of jumping out for you in agreement with the guys, in disagreement?
Well, I think the betting on this game really comes down to the number and the price point that the 49ers are at. We've seen them cover 3 times as underdogs, and the other game that they covered was as a short 3.5-point favorite Monday Night Football against Cleveland, which was ultimately bet up. But the other 2 times they've been installed as a larger favorite against Pittsburgh and last week, failed to cover both occasions. And I think that's sort of reflective of the style of football that they play. As Brad mentioned, they run the football 55% of the time. And it's really not a team that, unless things really go their way on both sides of the football, is going to blow out a lot of opponents. And that's sort of coming through here now that we see them at really the highest price point all year, against a pretty significant step up in competition from some of the schedule that they've faced, which has really benefited them overall. And I think from a matchup perspective, which likely bodes well for the under, you look at how Carolina could potentially attack this defense. San Francisco, as good as the front 7 has been and as incredible as the secondary has played, they've allowed some success down running the football, just averaged 14th in the league in that regard. So with Carolina and Christian McCaffrey coming off extra rest, which has benefited him throughout his career, he potentially has some success running the football, which works into the Panthers' game plan just a little bit. And on the other side of the football, Panthers' secondary has been quite good, trending the wrong direction in the last 2 or 3 weeks. But we did see them put together a very good performance against Tampa Bay. And now they face Jimmy G, who all of his issues under pressure really do not get the press that they deserve. And this Panthers pass rush is grading out as the 6th best unit in the NFL from the qualitative side of things. So if they're able to generate a little bit of pressure, potentially San Francisco ends up running the football just a little bit more than they usually do at that 55% rate as they do take a lead. You also see that number increase as well. So potentially a game where both teams end up running the football, and you just wonder how the 49ers can put up enough points to get outside this number. But I think a little bit of a slower paced game with the focus of running the football both benefits the under as well. So I'm not going to get involved, as I think both of these numbers pretty well in the range that they should be. But I do see that as sort of the most obvious handicap playing out on the field this Sunday.
Brad Allen, before you move on, you wanted to come back in there, sir?
Well, yeah, just a quick one on Niners as favourites. I think of that Pittsburgh game, obviously they turned it over 5 times, and I think that's probably the main reason they didn't cover. And then last week was a bit of a slop fest, and I think that kind of nullified their edge. So I wouldn't be quick to write them off that they can't cover as big favourites.
What did that total go off for last week, guys, on the Washington 49ers game? Can we remember?
41 or 42.
I didn't see anything. Normally I follow all these DFS weather guys.
Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah,
normally flagged up, and I didn't see a thing.
I think it was slightly flagged up, but not to that extent. And I think it's just kind of worth noting that it's obviously got the grass field there in DC, so that might be one to look at. I don't think the rain affects those artificial turf as much.
Can I push back on that a little bit though?
Okay.
I thought that the rain in Seattle on the artificial turf was the differentiating factor in that total. It felt like that was an over game in every sense.
Yeah,
of the word.
I know. I was on it.
So many red zone trips, but there was guys slipping, and there was the kicking game was impacted like that. That was a weird. That was a weird kind of the slipperiness wasn't necessarily something I expected. I attributed that to the artificial surface, and monsoon in DC.
Yeah,
completely changed.
The thing about that, Drew, is also, I knew that I did know there was some rain coming into Seattle, but yourself in the Pacific Northwest, it does just rain a lot. And
sure.
I didn't really factor it in enough. Obviously, we myself and the prof talk about this a fair bit, that the wind is obviously way more of a kind of a factor, but we'll come on to that sometime. Myself and the professor, we love talking about NFL weather. Just before we move on, guys, I'm going to make an executive decision here on that previous game, Panthers and 49ers, under 41.5. I think seems to be kind of the general consensus there. So let's lock that in as our play for that one, and obviously a lean on the Panthers for myself and Drew, and maybe a lean for the professor and the 49ers. So we're going to stay with the under. Let's move on to the third game of tonight's show. Denver Broncos at the Indianapolis Colts, and current betting here matchbook 1.42 the Colts on the money line, 3.26 Denver Broncos. 6 is the main handicap at the time of recording at 1.93. and the total is 43. Brad, I'll stay with you on this one. Colts opened -5. This is a weird market because I'm looking earlier, it's gone to 5.5. Now it's gone to 6. So bettors are kind of struggling to make their mind up. I just had it in my head that this line might get towards 7, but there seems to be a lot of people buying in on the Broncos this week, and I think you may be one of them.
Yeah, so as I understand it, I think it was bet off the 6, but I know a fair couple of sharp people who bet it off the 6. And then I think this Sanders news, obviously the Broncos traded away Sanders, I think that probably pushed it back up to the 6, would be my guess, because obviously some questions about, A, the receivers, and then B, the locker room. But yeah, I don't think this should be a 6-point spread. So the way I ended up on this game, I was just looking through some of season-long stats to try and get an idea of some of the stats correlated with winning so far this season, and I was looking through pass coverage. So first, second, and third is Patriots. This is by PFF grade. Patriots, San Francisco, Vikings. So we've got 7-0, 6-0, 5-2, destroying everyone. So I was thinking, right, this looks to be correlated with some success this season. Fourth on the list is the Denver Broncos, which I thought was pretty interesting. So I had dug into them a bit deeper. And they're the seventh graded team in the entire NFL by PFF. So I had a look at some other metrics. Massey Peabody, obviously, the metrics put together by Rufus Peabody and his partner. They have Denver 1.55 points better than average this year, which is actually 1.5 points better than the Colts, which is interesting. We've got Denver on extra rest here. And if you delve into it a bit further, it's basically the Denver defense. The offenses are broadly similar. I think basically Denver have faced a bit of a harder schedule, which is why they've looked quite poor. And then obviously they've lost a few close games. But the Denver defense is 8th by Football Outsiders efficiency compared to the Colts at 26th. And the Colts have actually had the easier schedule. So that gap could be even wider. So I just think we're buying. I'm always willing to forgive a Thursday night clunker. You see it a lot, short week. They play terribly.
Can I ask you just on that, Brad? Because obviously we did that Thursday night video. You were very hot on the Broncos. Even psychologically, is it better? Just from a kind of even for a recreational better. How hard is it after taking a kind of a shellacking like that you've to just literally tear it all up and say this is a brand new week, this is a brand new game, and you're comfortable enough now placing your hard-earned money again on the Broncos?
Yeah, it's difficult. We'll get to the Eagles later because I've gone on them back to back, and I kind of want to back them a third week in a row, and I've not yet because that is harder. I'm willing to forgive one clunker. Okay. Often if you see in value one week because of some metrics, whatever, it's normally there the next week as well. So yeah, I think you do have to be willing to go. It was one game sample. I was wrong before, or I might have been right, but I didn't get the result. But I've got to believe, the numbers I'm looking at, and I'm willing to go back to the well. And I would say the last thing to add would be they get their right tackle, Jawan James, back this week, or they're expected to. And that can shuffle the guy who's playing there. I think he'll move back to right guard. And it makes the whole line a little bit stronger, which is obviously quite important given that you have Joe Flacco back there. And I was reading an analysis of what's going on with the Broncos this week, and a part of the reason he's getting sacked so much is apparently he's taking these 10, 11 step drops, and the tackles are basically struggling to, you need to step up into that pocket, and that's quite an easy fix. And if some guy watching film can see that, then I'm sure the Denver coaching staff can, and literally a 7-step drop back, and he's not getting sacked 6 times a game. So I think there's some easy fixes there, improving the talent, and their metrics are still quite good regardless. So I'm willing to go with them again.
Adam Chernoff, you were quite warm on the Colts last week. I think you kind of went against the grain with the rest of us there because we like the Texans. But what are you thinking about on this one?
Well, I think it's another game where we see a price point sort of at the highest it can be within the range that the team can play to. And the Colts, they've won 4 games this year by combined 18 points. So it's not much like the 49ers in situations like this, not really blowing out teams. And I think a lot of that really has to do with their defense. As Brad mentioned, the secondary, it's been hampered by injuries, well below average against a very easy schedule. And the front 7 against the rush, very much in the same category. And I'd have to very much agree here with Brad. He made the case for the Denver Broncos defense. I think it's important to note and put that opposing schedule of quarterbacks into context. The 3rd most difficult opponents in terms of passing efficiency so far this season. And this is a team that's ranking in the top 5 in passing and rushing success rates. So a defense that's very much getting overlooked. When you look at the offense for Denver, which is really what you have to be backing here, considering the Colts' sort of inability to stretch out some of these games and really leave the door open for teams to come back and gain points, you have to think that off of the Thursday Night Football performance, where there have been some issues with Flacco, there's maybe more of an effort to run the football and sustain some drives and put together some longer possessions. I think that's certainly doable against this Colts team. So Denver likely with the chance to move the football. I think, Sully, you mentioned a very good point about bettors unwilling to back the team that they just backed a week ago off a loss. That Denver Broncos game on the isolated primetime game, one of sort of the biggest spots we can put in air quotes of the entire season. It wasn't just the recreational players. There was a ton of people siding with the Broncos. And the fashion that it played out with was really difficult for many people to go back to the Broncos. The Colts for a couple weeks now have really been talked up as this efficient game planning team relying on analytics, and it's all true, but they're really not putting together enormous blowout performances on the field. And we're looking at this price point now get to 6 and potentially higher. I think it's pretty telling that we haven't seen this one blow through the 6 and get to 7 so far this week, and so much resistance has been at 6. So would be leaning towards the Broncos here on the point spread.
Drew Dinsick, you were more than happy to fade the Broncos last week with the Chiefs. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, that was easier when you had a Colt. I was expecting Mahomes, and for them, for it to go down that way was really weird. I thought, and the Chiefs defense clearly played up, and that happens. But I think the handicap here, people, and obviously our co-contributors here are making a very strong case. I think the Broncos are a very decent look this week. This has tons of whiffs of the Raiders heading into Indianapolis, where Indianapolis was a small favorite against Atlanta. People kind of assumed Atlanta's still real good, but I'm not sure we're sold on these Colts yet. And the Colts, beat the tar out of the Falcons, and then the next week you get an inflated price, and an AFC West team rolls into town and shocks and upsets them. So there's a lot of that same whiff here with the Broncos. I like the fact that you can back a team that has 10 days to prepare and could heal some of the clear and obvious mistakes they made in the last game is huge. And I guess my general read on the Colts and Frank Reich they have the capabilities of running a more pass-heavy offense. They can do it. They just showed us they can do it against the Texans. But I don't think they are interested in deploying that unless they absolutely have to. I think they're trying to, if they can get a win by being physical, by winning in the trenches, by leaning on their run game, and kind of not asking Brissett to do too much. I think that's their plan A. And then, for a handful of games on their schedule, clearly they know, okay, we're going to have to, really air it out if we're going to compete with this team that can score potentially 30 points on us. And they roll out a more aggressive game plan like we saw last week against the Texans. But I would not expect them to go with an aggressive game plan here against the Broncos. I think their plan A is going to be, we got to beat them on the ground. We're going to beat them with a run. And I think that does set up for the Broncos to, if not get an outright win, at least stay inside a pretty inflated number as a 6. So I am agreeing with these guys pretty strongly here. And I have not added this to my card, but this is a very, very good case that I may be adding it. So
Prof, before we move off this one, so give me the angle because you're the strongest one here. So I'm going to let you make the official play here for us.
We'll just take the +6, I think.
Okay.
That's safe, should we?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. +6, 1.93 currently at the time we're recording. And I think it's very telling that, like we said, there is that resistance in the market. I don't see this game getting up to 70s. There seems to be way too much buyback on Denver. Let's move on to Sunday's early games. Remember, folks, clocks. What did they, Prof? Did they go forward this week? But we've got an early kickoff. We've got a 5 o'clock kickoff.
Yeah, early football.
There you go, early football. So just in case you're sitting around 5:15 thinking, I'm going to get my bets down, make it 4:15 this week, folks. New York Giants at Detroit Lions, our next game we're previewing. Giants currently on the money line here at Matchbook at 2.84. and you can back the Lions very short here at 1.33. Main handicap line is 6.5. Giants getting the start. I think there might be some 7 around the 1.91 currently. 49 is the total. Adam Chernoff, start with you on this one. That was a tough one for the Lions last week. I kind of felt that it was kind of one of those must-win games against the Vikings. But then, look, we talked about the Giants as well last week. They lay a bit of a clunker against the Cardinals. What to make of these two teams? What's your angle?
Well, nobody's allowed to feel sorry for the Lions with that coaching staff that they have, which is probably, I mean, they're not going to draw sympathy from anyone. They're certainly not going to draw my attention this week either. I think the Giants very much to look in this game at +7. And there's probably, for the first time in about 4 or 5 weeks, going to be a lack of support for the Lions within the market, or for the Giants within the market, which is why I think we're seeing this price point where it is. You look at the last 3 games specifically, the Giants played Minnesota, which is the best rush offense in the league. They didn't have their starting linebackers. Not one, all of them. Then you look at, they played Thursday night on the road with a rookie quarterback in Foxborough. They did that without their first 2 running backs and 3 wide receivers. Last week was really the first time we've seen this team resemble the full picture that they have, and they outgained, out-first downed, and had more yards per play than the Arizona Cardinals overall, held the passing offense to just 89 yards, and ended up losing by 6. So an interesting spot where a game they likely deserved to win by a number of different accounts, had a lot of luck go against them. Now they go on the road to Detroit, a team that since week 1 has been outgained by their opponents from a yards per play perspective. In both of their victories, they were outgained by at least 0.7 yards per play. So a team that really shouldn't be competitive in a lot of these games, continuing to draw a lot of attention, have people talk about them as one of the contenders in the NFC North. And I think that's kind of been put to bed a little bit now after that loss last week against the Minnesota Vikings. But you look at this Lions overall as the defense, 28th in passing success rate the last 3 weeks, and 27th against the rush overall. They, for some bizarre reason, get rid of Diggs, a key cornerback. Darius Slay hurt, tweaked his hamstring last game, a game he should have never started. The medical staff pushes him through. He gets hurt again. There's a lot of uproar within the locker room, a lot of players being vocal about that trade, and it goes back to this coaching staff, which has made questionable decisions the entire year. And you look at this defense that can be attacked from both ways. They rank last in pass rush win rate on ESPN. So this is a spot where Daniel Jones is potentially going to be cleaning in the pocket. It's going to have Saquon Barkley back from a week of practice as well. So I think this is not only the best offensive effort we see from the Giants, but also the best overall game planning one we see from the Giants too. So looking at this number, awfully large to lay with the Detroit Lions, a team that continuously gets outgained by their opponent. I think the Giants stay within this number and potentially have a chance to win this game outright.
Okay, I like it. I actually kind of think I kind of like the over here, 49. Joe Dinsick, what are you thinking? Any play in this one for you?
Adam's case is dead solid, dead read about Detroit. We've seen this happen year over year, and you can kind of always, you kind of have to pad the middle of the season with opportunities to fade teams like this when they are falling apart at the seams and they are making, trading away players that are, well liked in the locker room. And that's what the Lions are doing right now. And you look down and you see, they're favored by 7, and it's like the chances that this team comes out and gives you an honest effort after what's happened to them the last couple of weeks and then trading away a key piece on defense, like no way. So you may then ask me, well, why didn't I bet on the Giants this week? Which is
there's a lot of time. There's a lot of time to bet on the Giants this week. Don't worry.
I don't think I could do it, man. Their performance they had 10 days to prep for the Arizona Cardinals last week. They stunk. They were sloppy. They are not giving Daniel Jones an opportunity to really find comfort with this offense there. The fact that they're rotating pieces in who aren't 100% is problematic. The fact that you're not getting good continuity at practice because so many players are on, recovering from injuries. And the fact that
coach is poor too, Joe. He's not good.
Yep, it's not. Yeah, and it all trickles. The whole organization with the New York Giants, I got to tell you, is one of the more, fish rots from the head sort of situations in football right now. owner, GM, coach, all of it kind of trickles down, and it's not impressive. And so, they may get the cover, they may get the win. They probably will, because this has the whiff of Lions quitting. But I'm going to be watching, not playing.
You just don't want to know. You just don't want to know on this one. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. And sometimes no bet is a good bet. Prof, Adam made the case for the Giants +7. Drew really doesn't want to know. What are you thinking?
Drew's a baby, isn't he? I like the Lions. I probably prefer the over marginally. So I mean, I agree with basically everything Adam said. No Slay, traded away Quandre Diggs, and Slay was on Twitter immediately going like, WTF, like this is a shit show.
Yeah.
Stuff. Mike Daniels is tweeting about it. He's questionable to play anyway, and he's quite a key run plugger. And then the Giants should have their weapons. They should have Evan Ingram, should have Saquon. Don't know about Shepard. He might still be concussed. And then I think the other quite key thing here that favours the over. So obviously Matt Patricia, he's basically an idiot. He thinks he's Bill Belichick, but he's not proven. So the team doesn't buy in. It's a bit why they're kind of revolting, because he's like, oh, I'll trade away who I want. My scheme's the winner, but he's not Belichick, and the players don't buy in, so he looks like an idiot. But he wants to establish the run as well. So they were running 56. No, they were passing 56% of the time in neutral situations. Now, after the running back went down last week, Kerryon Johnson, they went up to 65% passing rate on situation neutral plays. And Stafford obviously went nuts, 354 yards, 4 touchdowns. So you would hope, if they don't have a proper running back, the replacement, Ty Johnson, and his backup, J.D. McKissick, they're both kind of pass-catching backs. Obviously, they've got the weapons outside, Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones. I'm hoping that the Lions are going to come out, start chucking it around, because that's basically what the team is built for. And I do think the Giants are going to, they've got the weapons to come back as well, and the Lions are banged up on the defensive side and possibly not trying anyway. So I think we could have a nice shootout here.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I think we're going to lock in 2 here. We're going to lock in the Giants +7 and over 49. That was kind of one of my bets of the week, which we'll get to in a while. Let's move on to Wembley and the London game. And now, ordinarily, gentlemen, we've said this before, we love this game to be played early in the afternoon. However, the fact that we have Jared Goff and Andy Dalton, I'm quite happy for this game to be just shoved away somewhere on Red Zone. We might see a few highlights. So, yeah, I'm not really interested in ruining my Sunday afternoon lunch watching these two guys. But current betting here on Matchbook, anyway, for the people who are going to this one, Bengals are getting a 13-point start on the handicap right now. 48.5 is the total. And if you're mad enough, you can back the Bengals here at 6.2 at Matchbook. And the best of luck with you. Prof, you going to this one?
I am not going for this one. I've given up going to London games. I'd rather watch Red Zone.
True fan. What are you thinking though, line-wise? 13. I mean, it's hard even. I know the Bengals, and I've been on them a few weeks where they've kind of snuck into backdoor covers here. But the Rams, even laying 2 touchdowns, I presume you want to be with them rather than the Bengals.
Yeah, I'd rather be with the Rams here. So the Bengals, obviously, they showed up the first week of the season, but they've just been ripped apart by injury, really. And the results have been, I would say, Dolphins-esque. They've kind of snuck in the back door, as you said a couple of times. But these drives at the end of games are reliant on converting like 3rd and 15, Dalton scrambling, and 4th and 12 and stuff. They're not a good team. They're probably going to be without their 2 wide receivers. And we know all of, not wide receivers, 2 cornerbacks, 2 starting cornerbacks. And we know all about the Rams wide receiver set. And they're happy to just smash teams. We've seen that with McVay. He'll just keep running the offense. And I think the other thing that's quite interesting is this kind of the neutral field favourites angle. So favourites on a neutral field, 26 and 12 and 2 ATS. You would get about 32% ROI just backing the favourites on a neutral field. And in London, they're 17 and 9. And I suppose the theory is, if you're the Bengals, you like the last thing you want to do, you get smashed every week. The last thing you want to do is go to London, like, right, come on then, let's get on the plane, do all this crap, get smashed again. And I suppose you're in London, maybe it's more of a holiday. It's a theory. I've not backed the Rams yet, but that's the way I'd go from those 2 angles.
Andy Dalton in London. What a beautiful combination. Drew Dinsick, tough one to be betting on with this line. But if you had to pick a side, would you be with the Rams as well?
I disagree about it being a tough one to bet on.
Oh, okay.
Lay the points. Easy call. Easy call.
Okay.
I know it's a lot of points, but you have an inexperienced coaching staff in Cincinnati making it over, an international trip. You have a team that hasn't won a game all season. I don't know how you get them motivated to give you a focused effort on the same week while you're kind of like, well, hey, we get to go to London and, see England, and then we get to go to a bye, and then we'll come back and try to get a win. I mean, I don't see how you get a competitive effort out of this Bengals team with their injuries. I don't see how you even travel with some of the pieces that are questionable so you're basically trotting out your second unit against a Rams team who's fresh, who spent the week on the East Coast, making their travel situation easier. And this sets up for kind of the more veteran coaching staff, the more veteran, all pro players on one side of the field here. This could be, kind of a 33-0 kind of game the way I handicap it. So I don't mind laying 13 points here and enjoying a true ass kicking.
That sounds good to me. Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to fade the Bengals even plus 13. Adam Chernoff, anything to add in this one?
Well, the Rams had a bye last week, so probably they come in a little bit rested.
There you go.
I don't know. It's a big number. I looked at this game and I looked at the weather immediately with it moving over to Wembley instead of being in Tottenham, with obviously the difference in surface conditions. And I saw 25-mile-an-hour winds and pouring rain. Unfortunately, it looks like that's going to hold up on Saturday evening. So there was potential for this to be like an all-time weather situation. It didn't really materialize, and looks like it'll be more than fine as we get to kick off on Sunday afternoon in London. I think this is probably the biggest coaching mismatch of the entire season. There's rumors within the Bengals sort of management that potentially Zach Taylor's going to be giving up play calling duties at some point very soon. He's throwing the football more than 70% of the time, and that's looking at neutral situations as well. So the complete misusage of Joe Mixon has been horrendous. The injuries that nobody wants to return from the playmakers really paint a pretty daring picture of the Cincinnati Bengals, who I honestly have rated lower than the Miami Dolphins right now overall. So this is the worst team in the NFL. I don't really want to get in the habit of laying 13 on a neutral field in London, but I can't make a case for the Bengals. And it's probably going to be another game where the Rams can do whatever they want up front. Their pass rushers are winning 50% of the battles, and Cincinnati ranks worst in the league at that perspective on the offensive line too. So, I mean, this could get awfully ugly, but it's just a awfully large number to be laying on the neutral field in London for this game. So it's a no bet for me, but I get why you'd want to bet the Rams.
The only thing I would say about the neutral field angle, given the Rams to play in the LA Coliseum, there are many weeks that those are pretty much a neutral field too,
What is home field advantage anyway?
Yeah, what is home field advantage? Obviously, it doesn't matter anymore, but small bit like defenses. Yeah, right. I suppose we didn't really get too excited about that. But that being said, I mean, look, anytime you get to fade Andy Dalton in any game is generally it's a profitable and just an enjoyable experience. A new section we introduced last week, gentlemen, are Dogs of the Week. And I'm going to give you all a mythical £10 free bet. Do not have the cash on me at the moment. Prof, I'll see you next week or whenever. I'll give it to you then. Guys might see you guys next year. Who knows? I want an underdog. I want someone that, on the money line that may just cause a shock this week. Brad Allen, give me something. Anything.
Give me the Broncos.
The Broncos. Okay. Broncos. Current price at Matchbook, 3.26. Adam Chernoff, give me an underdog.
Lions. Giants. I've been mixing them up all week. The underdog is the Giants.
Underdog is the Giants. Right. Drew Dinsick.
The Browns.
Okay. Again, remember, this is no fall, no fair for play. You get your money back. Browns is an interesting one. Love that. I'm going to try to match you, Drew. I'm going to go to the Dolphins, 7.0 at the Steelers. Remember, I get my money back if it doesn't win. I think this is small but too big. Just remember who the Steelers have playing quarterback, and thought the Dolphins were small but frisky the last day. So, yeah.
Remember
Okay.
who the Dolphins have got playing quarterback. It's magic, baby.
It's magic, baby. Yeah, okay. So, obviously, if you don't have a matchbook account, you want to sign up today, you get what the guys just got there, a £10 mythical. No, it's not actually mythical. It's actually real, sorry. A £10 risk-free bet. So, if you do have the balls to back the Dolphins or the Browns or one of these teams, you will get your money back if they lose. So, it's no loss to you. And anyway, don't forget that's for new customers only. You'll be refunded up to £10. Bet must be played within 7 days of signing up for Matchbook. ACCA bets, unfortunately, do not qualify. You must be 18 or over. Check out offer.matchbook.com for that one. Let's do a bet recap before I get other bets, guys. Just let's run back through the card for those who weren't paying attention. I really like this first one here, 51.5 in the over, the Raiders and Texans. Under 41.5, the Panthers 49ers. What else have we got? The Professor, the Broncos +6, love it. Adam, Giants +7 and over 49 points. That's myself and Brad. We love that one. And I think we're all in agreement. The Rams -13. Big number to be laying, but it's the Rams. It's Sean McVay against his supposed disciple, Zach Johnson. They are not, or Zach Taylor, apologies. They are not related in any way at all. Drew, I think you kind of had one or two other bets. We didn't really kind of get to go at. Anything else catching your eye this week?
Yeah, the Houston over is my favorite total that we talked about already. But in addition to that, I can make a strong case that the Tennessee Titans game is going to go over. And then I backed the under in both two real low unders. So kind of hold your nose and pray for ugly games in Chicago and Jacksonville. And then in addition to my favorite side, which is the Rams, I also took the points with Cleveland in addition to thinking that the money line is a pretty decent look. Really, my angle for Cleveland is I think we were a week early expecting the Patriots to come in unprepared and, a little overconfident. Clearly, with 10 days to prepare for that Jets game, they were superlative and sharp. And now they have a short week where Cleveland is coming off their bye, Cleveland's season on the line. The offensive weapons that can finally test the Patriots defense potentially. So I think Cleveland keeps this close and is potential to get the upset. If you're going to give me, over 2 touchdowns or almost 2 touchdowns, I'll take that with an offensive unit that has the potential that Cleveland has. And then I'm going back to the well with Philadelphia. Last time. I think the Bills are one of the most overrated teams across the NFL, just based on their record of 5-1 or 6-1. People think that they're a legitimate strong team. Meanwhile, Josh Allen has the potential to drag them down any given week. And I think Philly, they're playing for their season this week. Another loss, and they can start to think about 2020, 21. So it's all or nothing for Philly this week.
Prof, in agreement on Philly?
Oh, I really want to back Philly because you look at the advanced projection systems, Football Outsiders, ESPN's FPI. Everyone's got the Bills at 25th. But I mean, what's going on with the Eagles? Is there a chance that the Eagles Super Bowl run was Frank Reich and that Doug Peterson isn't
potentially? Yes, it's a really good question.
They've not been that good since. If Deshaun Jackson plays, then I'll back the Eagles. Because at the minute, everything's a slog. Everything, it has to be a 10-play drive. And I think if they have that deep threat that can open everything up, then I think they'll be a much better team.
I'll ask you a question, though, about that. Could it be a Nick Foles and a Carson Wentz situation regards the Eagles?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think Nick Foles is better. But, I mean, if you look at the metrics, there's been a fair few comparisons floating around this week saying that the Eagles have won more games, scored more points with Foles.
Yeah,
maybe Carson Wentz also looks a bit banged up. People saying he's limping off the field and stuff last week. So, yeah, I've not pulled the trigger yet because there is questions.
Adam Chernoff, anything else in the docket that is tempting you?
Well, apparently I need to learn my team names and colors after botching that last segment. But just to add on to that Eagles comment, so I right now within my own ratings, I have them as the highest rated team playing to the lowest of their potential. So with not the highest rated team in the league, but I think that it's a team that's playing to their worst possible level among the top 10 teams in the league. So I think there's nowhere up for them to go. I think there's something more going on with Deshaun Jackson than is being told to the media. It's very strange how they're treating him. They're sort of forcing him on the side field, but they're being very careful about what they say and how they see it. And there just seems to be zero urgency on his end getting back after what wasn't initially ruled to be too serious of an injury. There's also been some comments about potentially murmurs within the locker room, people not really buying into Doug Peterson and having some issues with Carson Wentz as well. I don't think that necessarily comes through. It's a little bit concerning to see that, but my God, does this team have potential when they get healthy? And I think that's why we're still seeing them so high in the market.
Agree with that. Right, gentlemen, let's go to best bets time. This is the highlight of every week for me. Absolutely no pressure. I think we probably need to get back on the wagon this week, though. I think we're all in agreement that last week was tough. It was one of those weeks that, you keep your powder relatively dry. Yes, we probably all had a few bets, but that wasn't a great week. I don't know if this week is really one of the massively solid weeks either. A lot of injuries of quarterbacks, a lot of uncertainty. But let's give it a go. Let's keep this sharp. So, Adam Chernoff, you're in the top left of the screen. Best bet of the week.
Houston, Oakland, over 51.5.
Drew Dinsick.
Rams -13. I think they pitch a shutout.
Brad Allen.
Denver Broncos +6.
For me, give me over 43.5 in the Bills and the Eagles. Expect points.
Ooh.
Defense is not great either. Expect points.
Take 44 from the Eagles.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they're such a. Look, I picked them to be in the Super Bowl this year. So they're not done. They're in a weak enough division. Dallas. Let's be honest, guys. Can we really trust Dallas?
Yes.
Yes.
I think Dallas.
Really?
I think Dallas is superb. Their best passing success rate, top in offensive DVOA. Like if they've got both tackles on the field and Amari on the field, I think they can win the Super Bowl.
Wow.
Personally.
Oh.
Jason
Garrett on the sideline, though. He's going to make the right decision when the push comes to shove in the playoffs.
Yeah, there you go. And Drew, you called it last week. I used them as my underdog, the Saints. Yeah, this is, you said it's setting up so well.
What?
Really?
Oh, come on. Oh, gosh. What, do you know something? I mean, good. Okay. Do we have any time to
We do.
Okay.
We have a few minutes.
Okay, I know with this week's handicap is impossible because, number one, they're going up against an inferior team in the Cardinals, and number two, we don't really know who's going to be the quarterback. Presumably, they bring out Teddy Bridgewater, and it's a low. It's probably a good spot to back the Cardinals if they have Teddy out there, because I don't think they're covering a number that's as big as we're expecting. But that said, the fact that Drew Brees, his biggest limitation coming into the season was that he was throwing the ball too much over the course of the season. He was wearing down his shoulder, and he wasn't getting the downfield passing accuracy that he was that he was used to. And so he changed his formulation of, where he was reading, where he was trying to go with the ball. It made their entire offense less dynamic. They couldn't put pressure on the Rams in the NFC title game last year because of it. And all of this changes if he's given this 8-week window to get his shoulder right. And, if he's kind of in midseason form in January, then the NFC is in deep trouble, and maybe even the NFL. So I completely, the only thing to think about selling on the Saints is that everyone else has lifted their performance in the Brees' absence to make up for the fact that Bridgewater is not as effective a quarterback that can carry the team, and that they're all going to kind of deflate a little bit once Brees comes back, thinking that okay, now we're good to go again. You'd have to see literally everyone across all of these talented players kind of regress in terms of their performance, I think, to expect the Saints really to roll back in what their potential is this year.
Adam, I'll give you a chance to respond in a second, but Brad, you just wanted to come in first there.
Yeah, just on the Saints. I mean, the game they played against Chicago on Sunday was probably the most impressed I've been by any team this season. They just dominated the Bears. The Bears are a good team. They were 12-4 last year. They're decent strength in the trenches, but the Saints just were mauling them everywhere. If Drew Brees comes back and he's playing with that team, the rest of the team is, alongside the Cowboys, as probably the most talented in the NFL, in my opinion.
Adam Chernoff, I think we have about a minute if you want to go against Drew and Brad on this one.
Well, I think that the collective sort of accepted viewpoint on this team coming in was what Drew said, but also that there was potentially an issue with Drew Brees' declining arm strength, which we saw in full force in week number 1, where he was consistently underthrowing receivers. And this team has definitely played up to Bridgewater, but they've taken on a very different look that's not necessarily going to be there, I don't think, when Drew Brees comes back in and there's more reliance on him. And he's also coming off of a thumb injury, which who knows how that impacts his downfield throwing ability. So I think that this offense is not just instantly going to come back and be phenomenal again once he steps in and there's going to be this huge upgrade. I think they're playing to a point that's quite unsustainable. And their secondary has yet to really been tested. I think there's some serious holes there on the back end, especially if they get into sort of higher scoring games against better competition later in the season. I'm not paying this price for the Saints long term.
Okay. Bit of balance.
I'm not seeing any competition on their schedule.
I'm talking January once we get the playoffs. We're talking Super Bowl here.
I get like Aaron Rodgers, I guess, in your Packers is the buy team if you're selling the Saints.
You wait till the Cowboys roll in.
It's going to be a tough place to go, though, that Mercedes Superdome. If they have home advantage, that's going to be very tough. They've obviously got a lot of wounds to repair after last week. We could probably stay at another hour and talk about the NFC. That probably is the most fascinating conference comparison to the AFC, where we expect the New England Patriots to roll and maybe the Kansas City Chiefs. Right, we are out of time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening today. I hope we've steered you in the direction of some good bets. Don't forget, you can subscribe to the Matchbook Betting Podcast on your preferred podcast app. We've really enjoyed this. We really enjoyed doing these every week, and we will chat to you next week. Best of luck with your Week 8 bets.